Hi, everybody, and welcome to the KubeStellar community meeting. It's January 23rd, 2025. It's the second meeting of the new year. We've just started the recording, so if you were on video or audio, you've been muted or removed from the, or your video's been removed, so you can restart if you'd like, or you don't have to join at all. That's fine. Let's get this. I'm going to share out our agenda now. Okay, here we go. All right, to get to this agenda, you can go to kubestellar.io/join us. You can either use join_us or join us in one word, and you'll see a Google group that you can join. Once you join that Google group, you'll get access to this agenda, and you can edit it or add topics as you see fit. So we are proud members of the CNCF Sandbox project. And as such, we abide by a contributor code of conduct. So I read it every time we have a meeting, and so I'll do the same today. Our contributor code of conduct. As contributors and maintainers in the CNCF community and in the interest of fostering an open and welcoming community, we pledge to respect all people who contribute to reporting issues, posting feature requests, updating documentation, submitting pull requests or patches, and other activities. We are committed to making participation in the CNCF community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, ethnicity, race, age, religion, or nationality. Basically, it just means everybody please be nice to each other. And so with that, we'll move on to our agenda. So if you're attending the meeting and you'd like to drop your name in there and have a record of you attending, please go ahead and go to kubestellar.io/agenda. That's this document here, and add your name, affix it to the attendee list. Okay. All right, so there's a lot of new faces that are in the audience today, and I want to say thank you for joining us. And just as an update to the community, I've created a PR inside the CNCF's Summer of Code run by the Linux Foundation. This was originally a program or project that was started quite a few years ago by Google, and other people have adopted it to use it for their own means. And being a part of the CNCF community and as part of the Sandbox project, we are able to access that resource and use it for the purposes of promoting and advancing the technology in our community. And so we've come up with a premise or purpose for this year's CNCF Summer of Code, and it's for the purpose of building our first user interface for KubeStellar. And if you're interested in taking a look at what that repository looks like, you're welcome to do so at KubeStellar/UI in our GitHub. We've got now the basics of the beginnings of a front end and a back end. The back end is written in Go. The front end is written in Node. We use Vite and React, and you're welcome to install it and take a look at it for yourself. Some of the contributors and folks who have joined us for this quote-unquote Summer of Code, which has started a bit prematurely, and it's not supposed to start till March, but people were eager to get started, and I didn't stand in their way. So some of the folks that have joined are currently contributing and are listed here below. Some of those same folks are on the call today. So I want to say thank you to all of you and express thanks to all of you for joining us for this quote-unquote Summer of Code, and we look forward to all your contributions. Everyone on this call, please do your best to help and support them in any way you see fit. Okay. Very good. So last time, just to continue on with our agenda, we talked a little bit more about our independent review that took place with Carlos Santana. And I'm going to try and go to see if we get to our videos. Let's see, for KubeStellar, where are we here? KubeStellar, your channel. Okay. So I think we've got 39 views for that particular review. I urge you, if you can, to promote it in your social circles, send it out to others. You can go to KubeStellar/TV to get to this YouTube page. Also, our infomercial. Kevin is working on a new version of our infomercial. I won't give away any of the details, but hopefully by KubeCon EU, we'll have a new version of the infomercial posted and ready for other people to watch. I'm going to remove this from the agenda now. It's been on here for a few weeks. Okay, who would like to talk about the current release situation for KubeStellar? I think we're still at Alpha 4. Mike, are you out there?
Geez. Yes, I'm here. Right. Well, we're working towards the next release. We've done a couple alpha releases to test features of changes in the release process, but I wouldn't say we're near to making the real release. Actually, now that you mention it, we have had another change to the release process merged. We should make another alpha to test that. So I guess I will propose that later today. I'll make the PR updating the self-references, and we can test that latest change. But we're, just kind of in progressing normally. I don't think I have, in my mind at least, a clear goal or goalposts for when we make the next regular release. That might be worth discussing what we should be aiming for. Maybe if the next test succeeds, we could do a release. There's been some work that we could consolidate on, but there's some things in flight too. We're working on that as you'll cover later. So I'll stop here and just say I don't have a firm goal for deciding when to make the next release and that I'm aware of or thinking of.
Okay, good. I think the only thing that I saw, Mike, it was the removal of the concurrency in the demo env script. Although most people point to main to get that, but so I guess it's not really necessary for a release to be cut in order to support that. But just something I thought about. I don't think there's any of the artifacts that are release specific that need to be revved in order to support it. But anyway, Kevin, something I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if you've done this yet or not, but I have a pin tab or a reference to KubeStellar.io, and what I've noticed is that when I go to KubeStellar.io and I click on documentation, I think I'm going to I'm going to like the last time I clicked on a version. Or do we update that documentation button? Let's see. I don't have a record of what this is. It's not showing me in the preview down below. You're on mute, Kevin.
I think that may be a cookie that MKDocs is setting in your browser.
Okay. All right.
Because we don't change the landing page. It goes to whatever version you've loaded. So if you change versions and go back to the landing page.
Didn't we have a notion of stable? We don't anymore, huh?
Right, we don't anymore. Yes.
Yeah. That's the issue. That was what I was avoiding when I created it that way. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, but if you want to reset the cookie, once you've loaded a particular version, then click on the welcome in the blue menu right there in front of you. And I think that will...
I get that. I just the problem.
Andy, we do have a latest. So we had multiple aliases, and we decided that stable was not really meaningful, but we do have a latest alias that points to the latest regular release.
Okay, latest regular release. Okay, non-alpha. So then it is working. I'm just getting I'm getting non-alpha. That's all. All right, I understand now. So maybe it's fine. I'll just keep an eye on it. Okay. Thank you, Mike, for the update. All-in-one demo environment. So we've added support for K3D, and that's been merged. The latest on this is we're now removing concurrency because it was causing issues with creation of resources during the execution of the script, in particular things like kind clusters that were trying to access kubeconfig simultaneously, and we all know or have learned in the past, many of us, that trying to write or read the kubeconfig at the same time is a real nightmare. Okay, concurrency from script is underway. Okay, I haven't made any more progress with Yarrick or any of those folks on trying to use this as a baseline for the Galaxy projects, but I'm hopeful that at some point that becomes more mainstream and requires that kind of thing, and we can remove some of the redundancy that's in the repositories that exists. Okay, KubeStellar UI, I mentioned at the top of the meeting, we have read-only WDS, ITS, and binding policy. We don't have any representation yet for binding policies. So more functionality is planned. So I'm hopeful that the folks that are on this call that have joined from the UI Summer of Code, I'm hopeful that they'll have an update during the, let's see, January 23rd, February 1st, February meeting for this community. So I'm hoping that in the next community meeting, we get an update as to progress on the UI and some formal representation from that team. Okay. Upgrade campaign. Mike, any new news on this?
No.
Do we still need to reference it? Is it still ongoing?
Yeah, we still need, I'm just lacking for time, but we're unblocked to be able to work on going to the next Kube release. We're currently based on Kube 1.29. We can go to Kube 1.30 as soon as somebody has the time to work on it.
Okay, very good. I don't think it's pressing. How many months do we have left?
Actually, that might be a good release criterion. I think maybe 1.25 is based on 1.28. We should make a release once to consolidate the move to 1.29 before doing the move to 1.30.
Okay, sounds good. All right, performance testing. Braulio, anything you'd like to report?
Just currently we are working on PR 2644 and 2686. Mike has been reviewing. Now I'm not addressing the latest comments on the PR 2644. And Mike, so whenever you have a chance, the PR 2666 is ready for another review. That's all on.
Okay. Thank you. All right, summarization work. I've been seeing some banter back and forth in GitHub. Did that merge finally?
No, we're still working on getting the change. It has to be done because things are split between repos. We first have to make a change in the OCM status add-on repo, which defines the API of work status. And then we can make the change in the KubeStellar repo to take advantage of that enhancement.
Okay. Very good. Okay. I've also seen some things about, but I don't see any reference on it here about, was it using multiple clusters or being able to use multiple clusters at the same, multiple KubeStellar instances at the same time? Am I?
Yeah, actually, so that's, I did open an issue there for, let's see, I forget exactly where it was in KubeFlex. Yeah, so, I at least, I don't know if anybody else has this experience, but, I have the experience of working with multiple KubeStellar systems. So that's to say, by KubeStellar system, I mean, hub plus spokes, the core and WECs. So KubeFlex hosting cluster and stuff in it and WECs and associated WECs. I have multiple copies of that that I deal with, and mostly that's okay. The one sticking point that I've noticed so far is the kflex ctx command. When you say kflex ctx wds1, for example, it makes a kubeconfig context that we will typically rename, although it's not strictly necessary. And that's okay well, as far as it goes. I can rename it to a more specific name. But it also makes in the kubeconfig file a cluster with the name that is just based on WDS. So if I rename my context, I've not renamed my cluster. And so I can't do kflex ctx WDS from another system because that'll destroy the cluster in my kubeconfig from the other system. So that's the issue.
Okay. Okay, very good. Paulo, anything you want to update us on from that, from the KubeFlex point of view, or?
Yeah, the update is we are working on this PR on the adoption of external clusters. I think we are very close to merge. And one of the first use case we have in mind is be able to somehow import or adopt an existing cluster, like, for example, OCM or ACM that already exist. And from KubeStellar, we should be able just to import that. So we can just use it without having to install KubeStellar on that. That's probably the main use case we have in mind. And the other part is I'm working with Mike on chasing down some issue with the installation script. I think we have found the issue there and working on a solution now.
Okay. It surrounds secrets, right?
Yeah, it's about being sensitive to secrets that are not owned by the KubeFlex controller, specifically for the vCluster use case.
Yeah, I never thought secrets would be such an interesting topic in all of Kubernetes, but you remember when we were dealing and struggling with secrets being created on their own as a result, I think, of a service account being created?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and then that changed in one of the releases. I forget if it was 28 or 27. But then as a result, I've been finding that a lot of the documentation I'm reading online is outdated because they rely on the fact that, you know, a token has been created for you automatically when you're using a service account, and it's not the case. So it's just something to be aware of as you bump around in what appears to be up-to-date Kubernetes documentation for other projects, but in some cases it's not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I found the same issue. So I had to look if it's a current, which Kubernetes release applies.
Yeah. I found this in, I think it's in the MinIO documentation. I think is where I found they didn't make an explicit reference. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, folks, let's see. So for KubeCon EU, Paulo, I think the two main conference paper discussions or CFPs you put in for it were declined. The three co-located, I think two of the three co-located are waitlisted, right?
Yeah, one was not accepted, and the other two are in waitlist. One is about the integration of KubeStellar with Q in waitlist. The other one is not really directly related to KubeStellar. It's more about Kubeflow Summit work on agents.
Okay. I'll be looking out for agentic kind of things and agent stuff for AI in when we go to KubeCon EU. Probably be a lot of presence there for that.
I expect so. One topic we are working on that I think at some point is going to also cross over with KubeStellar is somehow making agents run in Kubernetes in a more kind of seamless way from the point of view of the deploy and managing these agents. So I expect that when you have scenario where you have multiple Kubernetes clusters, we could use KubeStellar as the way to deploy these agents around.
Yeah, it would be nice to see people start to understand the reasons why you might want isolation and separate clusters to do that type of work rather than one giant cluster, um, geographically distributed. But yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right. Okay.
I mean, the concern, I think, the usual, right? You still have data that maybe is local to that particular cluster.
That's right.
Agents still use tools. Tools may need to access data, so you definitely have those scenarios there.
Yeah, there's something that I've been tinkering with that I wanted to bring up to your attention, and maybe it's something that I know you've probably overcome it in other ways, but you know that referencing an internal service to a kube cluster doesn't require using it's a different, you're using a different host name than you would use if it's an external route. And I wonder if there's something that we can do to make that easier for people to manage. You know what I'm referencing?
You're
Paulo?
talking about multi-cluster networking, right?
Yeah, well,
Well, you
it
see,
can even be
starting with
just
an
single
in-cluster
cluster.
observation.
It's single
Right,
cluster.
right.
Yeah,
So let me just make sure I understand.
yeah,
What you're saying is within a cluster, um, code running in a pod in a cluster can open a connection to a domain name that is constructed from a service name.
correct.
And that's because Kubernetes configures those containers to use a DNS resolver in the cluster
External.
that specifically resolves those domain names and then delegates the rest to the host.
That's right. Yep. And there is it's not a CNCF project, but I did see one that was out on the show floor that kind of made that seamless. In other words, like for me, in my testing with the things that I've been coding recently, right, I've got to make a version that is for my local environment. And I just run when I create a local container and run it locally on, let's say, a kind cluster, versus deploying that on a specific cluster and having a config map and a secret that supplies information about routes or service names. And so I'm wondering if KubeStellar can become more conscious or cognizant of the fact that there is differences between those things and maybe help others overcome the issues that come with naming services across clusters or even in the same cluster for local and remote usage. I don't have a real good idea of how to tackle that, but I thought of it as it's just one of those things during a DevOps cycle that doesn't drive me crazy, but it's one of those things that I have to pay attention to that many others do.
I'm not sure I follow exactly what the problem statement is here. We do have in KubeStellar already the ability to do a customization as things are distributed to different WECs, do destination-based specific customizations.
Right. So if you think, and that's probably the road that I'm going towards or going down, I guess, is that we want people to use workloads ubiquitously across multiple clusters. Okay. But one of the hurdles in doing that is not just having, an atomic Nginx thing that runs somewhere and we hit it from an external source. It's a service mesh, right? And that service mesh, when it gets deployed, may not have the same endpoints it relies upon in one cluster. Well, it definitely doesn't have the same names of endpoints, right? Necessarily. Or if it has access to external and local, more regional access to things, servers that are outside, let's say, the Kubernetes cluster, and they want regional access instead of, you know, having to trip halfway around the world to get access to something. There's something regional. It may even have to do with sovereignty. So I'm thinking there might be something there, but Mike brings up a good point about customization. I just don't know how to do a better job of helping people bridge that gap.
Well, maybe that's a use case we should document just to make it. I think that's something that can be done. So if I understand correctly, What you're talking about is someone who's doing multi-cluster and they want the the code running in multiple WECs to communicate. That's not the only use case. Certainly, we've also talked about use cases mainly inspired by Edge, in which each WEC is self-contained, and we don't expect communication between WECs. But we certainly do not mean to forbid communication between WECs. And so I think what you're saying is that to support communication between WECs, the code running in one WEC needs to be configured to use a way of addressing, naming external endpoints that varies depending on how close it is to the endpoint that it wants to communicate with. And yes, I believe that can be done with WEC-specific customizations.
Yeah. I mean, think about the difference between creating a massive cluster that has multiple nodes and big nodes that can tackle work, and then you're going up against, like we were talking just a bit earlier about agents and having isolation, keeping data from touching other data. I mean, it begs to me the question is, are we doing enough in the area of network awareness? If I'm looking at the basics of a compute, right? You got CPU, memory, storage, and network. I think CPU, memory, and storage is all mostly self-contained. The network is the part I think that's a bit tricky. And maybe if we can do a better job, or start looking at what it takes to support people in splitting apart workloads, maybe then it becomes easier for people to imagine what it would look like to be in separate clusters rather than in one single cluster that's geo-distributed.
Well, I will just say, if you're trying to synthesize make a bunch of clusters act like they're really one big cluster, that's actually a big ball of wax. It involves scheduling as well as networking, and I'll just say that big ball of wax is beyond the scope that we have defined for KubeStellar thus far. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about. I think from the standpoint of scheduling, Mike, we've gotten hints of what it would look like to do that, especially in the work that we've done with Kubeflow, and there's all manner of being able to adapt to be able to use KubeStellar in a way that we could do scheduling. I don't think that. I think that's there's a body of work, or there's mind share around that already. I don't think anybody's really tackled I'm going to call it a problem, or the challenge associated with networking. And so what I guess I'm looking to promote or suggest here is that maybe we start taking a closer look at that, because it might be something that's attractive to others.
I do have to go to my next meeting. I'll just say the idea of making a bunch of clusters work together to look like one big cluster has been around for a long time. You may recall there's a project called, the second name was Kubernetes from Google, and that's years old and has evolved to a lot of other multi-cluster work. So I think experience shows it's actually a very non-trivial thing. Anyway, so I got to go. Thank you all.
Great. All right. So I think, Franco, are you on the call? Yeah, you are. Did you get accepted or not accepted for your talk?
I did not get accepted. No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Partner Pavilion, we were accepted. The two talks that I submitted were not accepted. ContribFest, we were accepted, and our Lightning talk was accepted. So I think I'm pretty okay with Partner Pavilion and Lightning talk. I've done them before. ContribFest is new. So if anybody has any ideas on what you'd like to do at ContribFest, maybe there's some element of the user interface, maybe the back end parts that can be, we can create a lab experiment around this, that we can bring other people into the fold, and so they can understand what goes on underneath the covers and educate them as to how KubeStellar works. That might be interesting. So something to consider there. All right. The Cornell SDF program, we're the software defined farm. We're still working with them. We're going to be renewing. our commitment to them this year. We're starting to experiment with Enclave and confidential computing and how it intersects with KubeStellar in the year of 2025. So stay tuned for more developments there. And I think that's gonna be about it. Would anybody like, so I'll open it up to the floor at this point. Anybody want to talk about anything specific or have any comments or questions for the rest of us? All right. So next time we meet, like we maybe get an update from the UI folks. And so Yash, you're representing those folks here. So if you'd like to take that back and consider what we might talk about in 2 weeks from now, that'd be great. Other than that, if there's no other further questions or information that needs to be shared, we'll end the call. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.